Welcome to Early Adopter, the podcast where we help make AI your unfair advantage. I'm Jess, marketing exec by day, AI experimenter by day, night, and basically every other waking moment in between at this point.
And I'm Kyle, your resident tech guru. I've spent the last decade building data systems, products, and AI tools that solve real-world problems. Each week, we'll break down AI concepts, tools, or trends that actually matter for your business.
So whether you're a small business owner, an entrepreneur, or you're just tech curious, let's dive in. Just think of us as your guides through the wild, wonderful, and sometimes completely overwhelming world of AI.
This is Early Adopter.
Welcome back to Early Adopter, the podcast where we help make AI your unfair advantage. I'm Jess.
And I'm Kyle. So Jess, start us off. How was your week?
Well, you might be able to hear it in my voice that I have managed to pick up a cold, which is actually the first cold that I've had in ages. So apologies in advance for, everything.
I feel like you and all of England has gotten sick. Like I know every other person I speak to on a regular basis in the UK is sick.
Yeah, but
Good.
Yeah. So
nice.
that has been my week. Really just working and having a cold. That's my week. How's your week been?
Well, despite my constant introversion, I've been quite the social butterfly this week.
Ooh, check you out.
I know. I'm very popular these days. What can I say? But I've been to I went to like a Halloween movie night last night where someone made these like little things with like pumpkin and nuts and stuff, and I was like, okay, this is now officially fall. Like
it is officially autumn. It is, yes.
I put the autumn cracker in my mouth, and it was delicious. So
Are you a pumpkin spice latte girly?
I am not, because I don't like the sugar, but I do love pumpkin, like pumpkin pie.
Oh, pumpkin! Yeah, I do love pumpkin pie. It's so American, but I do love pumpkin pie.
I know. The fact that the real sadness is that we only get it once a year. But then maybe it's like too much of a good thing. If we had it all year round, maybe we wouldn't really appreciate it.
True, but you can have pumpkin spice things outside of November. It is allowed. You have free will.
And I am adult, so I can do whatever.
You are an adult. You can do whatever the hell you want. You actually just reminded me that I actually also did a Halloween movie related thing this week. It was my monthly film quiz on Monday this week, and I know, and you used to be on the film quiz team. And this week was the Halloween.
I just think I'm still like an honorary member.
You definitely are. I'm still on the
WhatsApp
group. That is true. You're
still on the WhatsApp group every once in a while.
Exactly, you do. But it was because they're not having it next month in October because November is their 200th quiz. So they did Halloween early this year. So
There's a lot of good content for the horror, the horror trivia. I remember that a couple years back.
They really go. It's their favorite genre as well, so they really go all out on the horror quiz, and it was one of the funniest quizzes we've had in a while. It was really hard. It was a really, really difficult quiz, but they also found some of the funniest horror movie clips. They know everything. The team that won got like, out of 60, I think they got 57 or something.
That's wild.
These people are insane. Anyway,
that's impressive.
I know we could talk about film quiz all day long, but we should probably talk about AI. We should
probably get to the topic at hand.
I know. Although we could talk about this all day. Anyway, this week we are completing the.
What a segue, Jess! What a segue!
I try. Look, I'm on a lot of cold drugs right now.
Love that.
This week we're completing the second part of our series on answer engine optimization. And we actually had some really timely news this week on this very topic. OpenAI made a massive announcement this week, basically validating everything that we had talked about last week. So it's actually happening even faster than I think we expected.
Way faster. And it feels like everything keeps getting faster and slightly overwhelming. So
yeah, it really is.
But before we dive into that, I think let's do a quick recap for anyone who might have missed last week, or just, let's just do a quick refresher for everyone. I think that's helpful.
Although we definitely recommend that you go back and listen to last week's episode, because some of it might not make sense if you listen this week, but we'll jump
plug.
Right. Exactly. So last week we covered answer engine optimization, or AEO. It's essentially SEO, search engine optimization, for AI engines like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or Google's AI mode. But the fundamental difference is that traditional SEO was all about ranking number one so that people would click through to your website. AEO is about getting cited in the AI's answer itself. So it is quite different.
And the reason this matters is the numbers are starting to become really stark and really
Yep.
important to keep in mind. So, as we talked about last week, 60% of searches now end without a click to your website.
Mhm.
And actually, that now has been validated by HubSpot's recent research as well. People are getting their answers directly in the AI interface and never visiting websites at all.
And when people do click through from an AI recommendation, the conversion rates are much, much, much
Mhm.
higher. So, an example that we'll probably talk about a fair bit is Webflow. Webflow saw a 6x conversion rate difference between LLM traffic and traditional Google search traffic. So, six
Mhm.
times is not just a marginal improvement, like that is actually transformational.
Yeah, and we kind of walked through last week. It makes a lot of sense because by the time someone actually clicks through to your website, they've gone through a whole kind of personal discovery journey or like a
Yep.
consultation with the AI. They've identified their pain point, they've asked for potential recommendations, they've researched it. If they're doing all of the prompting that we talk about, they've kind of gone through quite a bit of iteration to then get to your company or your site. And the AI understands a lot of their specific needs. So what we talk about like with funnels, they're so much further down the funnel than the typical marketing funnel where they're just in the discovery phase. They're pre-qualified or maybe even more than that. So it's a really good lead.
So that is the context as a recap of what we're talking about. So let's get tactical because last week we really dedicated to just talking about why it was important. And this week we really want to get into how do you actually do this. So I'm going to break this down into a framework based on some research that we've done. There's an interview with a guy called Ethan Smith from Graphite, which is on Lenny's pod. If you haven't listened to it, it's probably the most comprehensive tactical guide on AEO that exists right now. He gives away an incredible amount of information for free. So that is
Mhm.
definitely worth a listen. We'll make sure that that is in the show notes so you can go back and listen to it in full.
There are essentially three main pillars. The first one, on site optimization. Then you have off site citation building. And then lastly, measurement. But I think before we dive into that, Jess, we should probably address some important things.
Mhm.
This isn't necessarily about gaming the system or creating spam, or as I always like to talk about, being another like AI SDR bot that's going to
Oh,
reach out to a million people for you.
no. And thank you for saying that. And we'll talk more about this later. But it's really important to reiterate that the entire approach really has to be rooted in authenticity and
Mhm.
genuinely helping people and providing people with content that is genuinely useful, because that is kind of where SEO has gone a little bit
Mhm.
wrong. But we'll get more into that later.
And I think this is one of the reasons it could be really good for the
Mm.
overall ecosystem and for marketing as a whole. As you pointed out, unlike traditional SEO, where you could keyword stuff your way to the top or spend a lot of money to capture those really important keywords, AEO, on the other hand, is going to reward genuinely helpful, clear content, what you're actually looking for.
So, with that philosophy in mind, let's break down how you actually do this, and we're going to walk through these three main pillars.
Mhm.
So, let's start with on-site optimization.
Yeah, and we start there because your website is the foundation. It's still the start of everyone's consumer journey when they're dealing with you directly. But and as we kind of talked about last week, it's not like SEO suddenly doesn't matter. We're sitting on the shoulders of SEO with AEO.
Yep, that's right. So SEO still matters for AEO because if your pages don't rank at all in the traditional search, they might not get into the retrieval pool that
Mhm.
ChatGPT or any of the other AI search engines pull from. So if you think of SEO as like an entry ticket, it kind of gets you into the room, but then
Mhm.
AEO is what makes AI actually call your name.
Yeah, I loved that analogy last week
Yeah.
too.
Well, I think
So
it's a really clear explanation.
yeah, absolutely. But what are some of the nuances, Jess, around on-site optimization for AEO versus traditional SEO with backlinking and all of that?
So the biggest difference is the long tail. And by that, I mean that the average number of words in a ChatGPT query is around 25 words versus
Mhm.
Google, which is around 6 words. So people are asking much longer, more conversational questions. And this is one of the reasons why we talk about conversational search, because it's that kind of back and forth. like a natural conversation versus what we
Mhm.
traditionally have used for search. So instead of a search query like accounting tool, they're asking what's good accounting software for a small business that needs to handle
Mhm.
multiple currencies and it doesn't require a finance degree to use.
Yeah, and traditional keyword research tools don't capture those queries because many of them have never been searched on Google before. So the long tail is enormous with conversational search.
So let's kind of put this into an actual framework now because we love a framework. So
We
so
do.
step yeah, we really do. So step 1, let's call it question mining. So you need to identify what questions people are actually asking about your product or your service. And there are several sources that you can look at for that, but essentially what this allows you to do is to start to get an idea of what questions you can
Mm.
address when you are creating content, because otherwise how do you know what you should be responding to if you don't know what the questions are going to be?
Yeah. So some of those sources are all the questions that exist somewhere out in the world outside of your website. So these can be sales calls, customer support tickets. This can be Reddit forums. You could go to G2 or Gartner or some of these places where people are giving reviews and kind of overall views of your business.
Yeah, and actually your sales calls are probably gold for this sort of thing. This is why it's really important to have this unstructured data that we talk about in our in
80% of
our
your data is unstructured.
exactly. And we talked about it in our data episodes, but this is exactly the sort of data that is perfect to pull from
Mhm.
because it's going to give you an idea of what questions prospects ask repeatedly. What
Mhm.
objections do they raise? What features do they ask about? What issues are you constantly coming across?
Yeah, customer support tickets are a gold
Mm.
mine too. What are people confused about? What are they getting tripped up on? What are they unable to solve? What do they need help with? So if you have a customer support tool that you use to capture all of this or a chatbot on your site, go through those logs and look at that. These are often very specific long tail questions that again are going to be perfect for recreating in some form of ChatGPT.
And then, of course, you've got your Reddits, your industry forums, anywhere that people will naturally discuss. Sorry, I can't speak. Anywhere where people will naturally discuss the problems that your product solves, that's going to be a good place to go because,
Mhm.
especially Reddit. And we'll talk more about Reddit later.
I think another good trick is take your existing SEO keywords
Mm.
and transform them into questions. So, a quick hack, give them to ChatGPT, ask it to generate 20 variations of questions people might ask based on the keywords that you're already buying or the keywords that have proven to be really valuable for your business. It's actually really good at this because it understands how people naturally phrase conversational queries.
So once you've done your question mining, then we move on to step 2, which is where you create comprehensive quotable content. And this is where the approach really differs significantly from traditional content marketing. Each page should target hundreds of questions, not just one keyword. So the more questions you answer, the better. And I know like this seems like a lot, but it is actually very important.
It's a great like customer journey exercise to go through. Think of it like you're having conversation with someone about your product. When they ask you one question, you're going to answer that, and then they're naturally going to ask you 3 or more follow-up questions. So your content should anticipate and answer all of those potential questions.
So if you look at like a product management tool example, so something like, let's pretend we're monday.com, right? Your your page shouldn't just say we're a project management tool. That actually doesn't really answer the questions.
Mhm.
It should answer what features do you have? What integrations do you support? What's your pricing? How does it compare to alternatives? Like there's quite a
Mhm.
long list of questions that it should be answering. But again, these are all questions that you will have encountered at some point within your company's lifespan. So it exists. It's just about finding those questions.
And the really critical part, if you do go through and do this exercise, you want to make sure you have clear factual statements that directly answer questions. So, not a lot of marketing buzzwords and things that don't really make sense, which I show up on websites and I go, what are they
I
talking
know.
about? Right. But things like, supports integrations with over 2,000 apps, including, and then list out like the top 10 or 20, Slack, Gmail, Salesforce, whatever it may be. Another good example is works in temperatures down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're, I'm not sure what example that would be good for, but it would be really easy and really specific for an AI to quote that.
Well, I think you'll find, Kyle, that that would be great if you were selling a winter coat, for example. So that
Or
is
a sleeping
exactly,
bag.
or a sleeping bag. There you go. So that's a great product description
Hmm.
example.
Exactly.
Um, so, just saying something really vague like we integrate with all your favorite tools, that's really useless for an AI because the AI needs to answer a specific question. And
Hmm.
also, natural language, which is the way that we're talking back and forth right now, is critical for AI because this is how AI interacts. Write like you're talking to a person, not like you're just stuffing a website with keywords for the search algorithm, which is something that a lot of websites actually really suffer from right now.
Yeah.
And the AI needs to be able to parse and understand your content conversationally rather than just keyword based.
This is why I have so much hope for this AEO world because I mean it's true. How many times do you go to a website and you read the descriptions and it's marketing buzzword, but what it really is keywords. They're
Mhm.
keyword farming because they're
Yep.
trying to basically stuff the litter box with high SEO ranking. But when I read it conversationally, I have no clue what you're doing, right? And I have to
Yeah.
like go to solutions and products and case studies, and I have to try to figure out, okay, what the heck is this thing?
Yeah.
Whereas I think in this new AEO world, you're finally going to have people saying like, we do this thing, we integrate with those things. And you're actually going to have like real words, not this buzzwordy, like explain like I'm five. I would love the world just to switch towards this. And
Oh,
I think
I know.
AEO is going to maybe force that shift. And don't forget, structured data still matters.
Yeah. So
Clear headings.
unstructured data is important, but
Mhm.
so is your structured data.
Yes. So clear headings, bullet points where appropriate, and the schema markups if you can implement that, but also numbers,
Mm,
statistics, clear
yeah.
ROI figures, super helpful because you're probably going to have people asking, what is the ROI of this?
AI loves a good statistic, and it's like one of the things that it's always hallucinating. So to actually have a legit
Exactly.
stat is really useful. But can
Mhm.
we just quickly demystify? I'm going to buzz my jargon buzzer. Can we just talk about what a schema markup is? Because I think some people hear that don't actually know what it means. So what is a schema markup?
Yeah, fair enough. I appreciate the buzzer. Yeah, and it's not super technical. A schema markup is just adding labels to your content that tells the machine or the crawler, this is a price, or this is a product name, this is availability. So you're kind of just giving it little markers so that it knows the context. Those recipe cards that show up in
Hmm.
Google with like cooking time and ingredients, that's schema markup in action.
Okay. So all of this means that instead of having your AI having to guess what information is what, you're explicitly labeling it. Is that right?
Exactly. So if you're on Shopify or WordPress for your website builder, that's a lot of that is built in. They will do the schema markup for you. If you have a custom site, your developer can add it. You don't need to become an expert. Just know it exists and make sure that your developer is building that into things that they create. So just ask them, do we have this set up? I think honestly, the most important thing is just writing really clear, comprehensive answers to real questions people have. The schema markup is helpful to tell the machine in the background what it is, but it's kind of a hack. If clear content is going to be the most essential.
So you know how we said a while back when we were doing our episodes about prompt engineering that really prompt engineering is just fancy wording for good communication. And I
Yeah.
think again, that's what it boils down to, right? This is the exact same concept.
Hmm.
And I think this is kind of a running theme with AI is that it's all about clear communication, good briefing, just giving
Yeah.
it the background and the context that it needs because that is how the AI works.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really
This
key.
and the schema is a nice to have, but what you're saying, clarity in your communication
Yep,
is the must have.
exactly.
Okay, so your next critical step is to optimize your help center. This is something that kind of surprised me, but I think makes total sense. Your help center or your knowledge base is critical for AEO because people are asking these AI
Mhm.
engines really specific questions about whether products can do what it needs to do. So, asking very specific tasks or functions. Can this CRM export data to BigQuery? Right? That's a very specific question.
Mm.
You're really only going to answer that in your knowledge hub where you've tried to answer that for someone specifically. Or, does this accounting software handle multi-currency transactions? You probably haven't put that on your website traditionally. That's probably sitting somewhere in technical documentation, But if it's not sitting somewhere, then you're not going to show up in the ChatGPT result.
I think these granular questions are often answered in help centers or in FAQs. And that sort of information often sits in those sorts of FAQs, not on the marketing page, or a product description page. And that might be the only, you in this particular instance might be the only source answering that really specific, obscure question, which means that you could really own that query entirely.
So that was the first pillar, and it's very focused around your website, right? This second pillar that we're going to get into is offsite citation building. And this is really where AEO starts to diverge from traditional SEO. And I think it's kind of exciting. So with traditional SEO, early stage companies have had trouble competing because they don't have domain authority. They may not have the same budgets for, keywords, what have you. But with AEO, you can get mentioned in a Reddit thread like we talk about, or you can be talked about, elsewhere on high domain authority websites and start appearing in AI answers immediately. So it's a really great opportunity to democratize mentions.
And do you want to quickly explain what domain authority is? Because I think a lot of people might not know. I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask that question. Sorry.
Yeah. If I was going to summarize domain authority, it's really a SEO metric kind of historically, and it's the ability to predict or mathematically quantify a website's potential to rank in search engine results. But it's really useful for understanding a site's overall strength. And it's not necessarily a Google ranking factor. Like, it doesn't directly impact your rankings, but a high domain authority can be built by earning, a lot of link backs from other authoritative websites.
It's a way of Google understanding that you're a real website.
Exactly.
That's kind of the other, that's the
Much
easiest.
Better.
That's the easiest way. But
it
it basically just allows Google to know that you're not a spam site or that you're not a fake website. There's a reason why it's authority. So that is what it is essentially.
It's not directly linked to showing up as the first result, but a higher domain authority will mean you rank higher.
So this is an important point because this is actually where smaller businesses or startups can really win with AEO, because SEO and things like domain authority often need a lot of money or a lot of expertise thrown at them. Especially now, 20 years in, maybe not 20 years ago when, SEO was kind of first starting to get off the ground, but now it's very difficult to rank on the first page of Google. And that is because these big companies kind of own that space. But with AEO, we're still in the phase where earlier stage companies can win, and you can win pretty quickly just by getting mentioned in a Reddit thread, or especially if it's an area of expertise where there might not be a lot of conversation about it yet. So it's a much easier, quick win than having to go through the whole domain authority SEO process, which is expensive and complicated.
Yeah, completely agree. The key difference here is that in Google, or traditionally, if your URL, if your site showed up first, you win. But in LLMs, the LLM is summarizing many citations based on its pool of information. So you need to get mentioned as many times as possible. It's about frequency of citation across those sources, which is super important. And I think also one thing to kind of note here, the sooner you do this and the more you show up and people kind of giving feedback saying this is a relevant result, that kind of reinforcement around you were the right result for them and they click on that means you're going to now show up more and more. So you can build quite a bit of authority within the AEO from that reinforcement mechanism as well. A couple examples here. Let's take a look at Reddit in particular, because we talk about that a lot.
Yeah, we do. Reddit is huge for AEO. Third-party content, which relies on user opinions, carries more weight than brand-generated content for most LLMs. ChatGPT, Google's AI mode, all of those rely really heavily on sites like Reddit. And actually LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn's a big one too. So that's another place where you can go and start to earn some street cred.
But I think where most people get it wrong is they try to hack it, or, they try that growth hacker approach where you create hundreds of fake Reddit accounts, you auto post comments everywhere, and you try to game the system.
That is not going to work especially on a place like Reddit. Anyone trying to spam is going to immediately be unsuccessful. Your account's going to get banned. Those comments are going to get deleted. You're basically going to get run off of Reddit. Reddit is a very, they're very aware of those sorts of tactics. So it's not going to work.
Yeah. It definitely adds to reputational damage. I've seen it in so many different threads where someone will post something and then you just have this long chain of people roasting the user. They're like, and you can look, right? So you can see when that user was created and their other posts. So you can look at that and go, oh, obviously that's an bot. And then you completely lose all those people that you were trying to reach. So the strategy that works is really simple. Find a thread that's part of a citation you want to show up in. Say who you are, say where you work, be honest and upfront, and give useful information. And again, that's all part of that authentic component, like that authenticity of the information you're trying to share.
In that Lenny's Pod interview with Ethan Smith, which again, absolutely go back and listen to, they talk about Webflow, which is one of their clients, and they have a couple people who work at Webflow who go to the comments and they are very upfront and very honest about it. And they say, this is my name. I work at Webflow. Here's a useful piece of information. But because it's still part of that authentic conversation and because they're being honest about who they are and where they work, that's still useful because people still need to know, stuff about website building. But as long as someone's not trying to be sneaky about it, then it's going to be welcomed because they are being authentic.
Absolutely. I see that work all the time where someone says, hey, here's an answer to your question. Here's something I've tried. Oh, and by the way, this is who I am. This is the company I work for. And this is how we're solving that challenge. That I almost, my click rate on that is probably 100%. I'm always looking at that because
they actually know what they talk about. They know what they're talking about.
They've shown credibility. They've given a useful piece of information and they're telling me, hey, I'm trying to solve that problem in the space. I'm like, okay, let me go look at that, right? Let me see what they're doing. You want to support that level of authenticity. And the truth is you don't need 10,000 comments. You don't need to farm all of Reddit at scale. You really are focusing on quality of engagement. So the Reddit strategy is just be an actual user of Reddit, make an account, say who you are, say where you work, and give useful information and tips. And that will help you build authenticity and credibility.
And honestly, this is how communities should work anyway. Like if you genuinely work at a company that's solving a problem that someone has, sharing that information and being helpful is going to be useful for everyone. So that there's actually a benefit to that.
Yep. All right. The next one we have is YouTube. So YouTube videos work really well for AEO. And I think it's particularly powerful for B2B because there's going to be a lot less competition in that space.
Yeah, I mean, there's not that many videos about AI-powered payment processing APIs, as thrilling as that is, but it's a really, really strong term from an AEO perspective, because if you're making a video for these really specific questions or topics, there's a really big opportunity in that because not many people are going to be talking about it. So it's more of an opportunity to be decided.
Yeah, because of the scale of YouTube, you can find these niche audiences where you can answer specific questions for those groups. And again, have really high engagement. And you don't need fancy production for this. Just screen recordings with a voiceover explaining how to solve problems. I mean, the amount of videos I watch around how to build AI agents from people, and look, they're not sexy. They're not high quality production.
No, they are not.
But they're informative. And ultimately, that the AI is going to pull from the transcript. They're not going to care about, they're not looking at your lighting or your production value. They don't care about that. They care about how credible and how useful that information is.
Totally. So like a video about how to integrate X with Y, or what's the difference between A and B, like walkthroughs of specific use cases. Those are all really, really, really quotable for AI engines.
Yeah. And the thing about YouTube, where it's a little different with Reddit, where you don't have that community issue, you can make a video and do whatever you want with it. Maybe people view it, maybe they don't, but you can make it and it becomes part of the citation pool.
Okay, so moving on to another source that is particularly useful is publisher relationships and original
Yeah.
research. So this means getting mentioned in industry publications, doing guest posts, participating in podcasts. All of this is going to build your citation pool because it's just getting you out there and talking more.
As we've talked about, AI agents and crawlers focus on authority and credibility. So that includes official websites. And obviously, we've talked a lot about the different New York Times issues and the partnerships that companies like OpenAI have with some high authority publishers. And then also we've talked about Wikipedia. So getting covered and being published in a lot of trusted publications carries huge amount of weight and probably will continue to be more and more.
And if you create original research or original data, that is also huge. So that's a white paper, that's industry reports, surveys, data analysis. If you publish something with original data, there's that AI loves to cite a number. Other articles will start to cite you, and then that just kind of amplifies your citation presence significantly. So that is, and that is not too dissimilar from SEO. But again, it's like how you're writing it, I think, in the way that you're writing it.
Yeah, I think a really good example of this is, according to XYZ company 2025 report, 73% of marketers say blank. That is going to show up in every ChatGPT, right? That is like very high authority, very conversational. It's extremely quotable. AI engines love citing specific statistics and data points like that.
Yeah. We should also flag that if you have money, you can pay a site or a publication like Forbes to mention you. And then, suddenly you're part of the top 20 best credit cards according to Forbes. It's expensive, but it's also an option. I should also say that is how people get on the 30 under 30 list. As impressive as it sounds, that is paid for. Just saying.
Yeah. Different tactics for different budgets and strategies.
Yep.
Everyone comes at it differently.
Yep. It's true. Okay, so let's move on to our third pillar, which is measurement and tracking. So you're doing all this work, you're getting all these citations out there, you're engaging with people on Reddit. How do you know if this is actually working?
This is one of the hardest parts because I think the measurement tools are still emerging. That being said, 6 months ago, there was nothing. It was just a total black box. Now we're starting to see some of those tools come out. And traditional analytics does not cut it. It's just not the same. AI traffic doesn't often result in clicks, as we talk about. So it doesn't show up as typical traffic. You may get a bot that shows up once, but you may be getting thousands of mentions. And so you don't see any of that.
Yeah. And if people aren't visiting your website because everything's taking place in ChatGPT, then that's not going to show up in your traditional metrics.
So your Google Analytics traffic is now very different from what you might actually be getting.
Exactly. So one of the things that you should look at is share of voice. So that's how often you're showing up across different platforms. So there are some tracking tools that you can use. So SEMrush, which is an SEO tool, actually just unveiled a free AI visibility index tool, which can reveal how brands rank in ChatGPT and Google AI mode. So that's free. So that's a great tool that you should use. SEMrush is generally pretty decent. So there are some things that are out there.
Yeah, it's built on data from over 2,500 prompts across a number of industries. It's a good start.
So there's a bunch of other tools out there. Graphite, which is the company that Ethan Smith works for, has one. So there are some, but there's not a ton. I think some other metrics that are important to track are branded search volume. So if people see you mentioned in AI answers, they might Google your brand name later. So that is definitely something that will happen. Direct traffic, people might type your URL in directly after they see you mentioned. Post-purchase surveys, which is a little old school, but is an interesting thing to add in. So, everyone's had those surveys where they say, how did you find us? And they'll have, Google or social media. Add ChatGPT or AI recommendations to your how did you hear about us options, because that should also give you a little bit of guidance.
I think that one's probably the most important thing to do. I've seen that now on a lot of sites, and I'm actually very quick to use that as the drop down to let people know that's where I'm coming from. And maybe even you want to dissect that a little more in terms of which of these tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that. But I think this is something you should do literally right now as you're listening to the episode. if you do have drop downs for how people search and find you, go add that right away.
Okay, so this is all well and good, but let's talk about why this conversation became even more urgent this week. And I mean, by conversation, I mean why AEO becomes even more urgent this week.
Mm-hmm.
So on September 29th, OpenAI announced Buy It in ChatGPT, or instant checkout. This is a feature that lets people purchase products directly inside ChatGPT without leaving the chat.
This is exactly what we talked about last week as the end game. Turns
Yeah.
out the end game is here.
Little sooner than anticipated.
Yeah, and this just shows how quickly this stuff is moving. Not in 5 years, not in a year, not in 6 months, literally right now.
Yeah, so this means that US ChatGPT users can now buy directly from US Etsy sellers right in the chat, with over 1 million Shopify merchants coming soon as well. So this is going to be powered by something called Agentic Commerce Protocol, and that is built with Stripe. And that is important, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
So someone can go in and ask ChatGPT, I need a birthday gift for my ceramics loving friend. Keep it under $50. ChatGPT will recommend specific products from Etsy. You tap on the buy button, enter your payment information, and complete the purchase, all without ever visiting that website.
So this is exactly what we were talking about. I'm hate to say I told you so, but we told you so. The entire discovery, consideration, and transaction happens in one conversational flow. There's no opportunity for retargeting ads. There's no chance for your sales team to follow up. There's no abandoned cart emails. If your product isn't mentioned in the conversation, you don't just lose the website visit, you lose the entire sale because you do not appear in the conversation whatsoever.
Which is wild from a control perspective. You're completely out of the loop.
It upends marketing completely. This is the last 20 years of marketing has just been completely shifted.
And I think who OpenAI partnered with is really significant and interesting. Their deliberate choice to launch with Etsy and then Shopify really is quite telling, or really great for this group, for all of us. Both of these platforms are built around SMBs, especially independent artisans, boutique brands, emerging D2C businesses. But the important bit is not the large retailers.
Yeah, and some larger retailers do work with Shopify. Quite a lot are powered by Shopify. But the fact that it was Etsy first, but also the fact that not a lot of large businesses, a lot of smaller businesses work with Shopify as well. I just think it's a really interesting opportunity to democratize the system, which is what we are constantly talking about. And I think it means that if you don't have budget for Google Shopping or an expertise in marketplace optimization, because that's been a real criticism of Etsy over the last couple of years, is that it's actually become very difficult to rank on Etsy because you have to know how to game the system. You essentially have to do SEO for Etsy. And so that has been increasingly difficult for small businesses. And it's one of the reasons why some small businesses have moved away from Etsy over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a great solve for one of Etsy's biggest challenges. So you can definitely see from their angle or their lens why they did it. Conversational commerce, I think is the term we're calling it, really alters this dynamic around the traditional search model. When a consumer describes specific needs, the agent or the AI can surface products based on the actual relevance to those stated criteria. So it's really different from, who paid for prominence, which creates an opportunity, but also, adds to the challenge of how do we show up when we've built an entire model traditionally that is no longer relevant.
We should also say who paid for prominence right now, because I think we can pretty safely say that that will become a feature at some point in
the
time.
Economics will win out for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We already know that they're hiring a bunch of people on their marketing and sales team, so ads are coming for sure.
And the technical barrier is remarkably low, which is great for adoption. So merchants processing with Stripe can enable these payments by updating one little line of code. Small businesses don't need to build these custom integrations or maintain sophisticated technical infrastructure that handles all of this. They just need to ensure their product information is structured, accurate, and comprehensive, something we've mentioned before, but now it's it's critical.
Yeah. So this brings us right back to AEO. Because if you are a small business or if you're a startup, the question now isn't, should I do this? It's how fast can I get ready for this?
Mm-hmm. And what makes this really significant, product results are organic and unsponsored. So they'll be ranked purely on relevance to the user and what that user is asking. So going back to our initial, what are the questions that your users or your consumers are asking for? That's what's going to show up in these results. So at least for now, OpenAI says they're not taking money for placement. That will change. But for now, you've got a great opportunity.
So another thing to mention is that this is not just OpenAI. Google announced something similar called Agent Payment Protocol. And so this is the direction that the entire industry is heading. So the OpenAI announcement was the biggest one, but everyone's going to be going in this direction.
We're going to start having way too many acronyms. We've got MCP.
Oh my God, it's already
now
so
this
many.
Is APP. I mean, it sounds like that 80s song, you know? Anyway, probably not appropriate.
This is why I have my jargon buzzer, because I really hate jargon.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But according to SEMrush's research, AI search traffic is going to surpass conventional search by 2028. By 2028? I mean, by 2026, I think.
Yeah,
like,
people are already using this. I know a lot of people hate AI mode, but people are already using chat for so much. I think I talked about it last week, but my dad shopped for a laptop using chat. I mean, he didn't do this purchase process, but he used it for helping him research.
Well, let's just admit it. Like, let's be open and honest. We're all lazy, and this really helps us shortcut a lot. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen quicker than that, I think.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, let's hit a few quick frameworks from our research, stuff that actually changes what you can do, what you do tomorrow and what you put into action.
First, content quality. So traditional SEO basically led to everyone rewriting the same articles. So we've all seen this, the same blog post on multiple SaaS platform websites. Like everyone has seen that. And that means that the result is 1 out of 20 pages drives the most traffic or most of the traffic. The rest are just noise. The rest are just filler.
Which is bad customer experience. Most websites, quite frankly, are bad experience. Whereas AEO nudges this in the right direction because ultimately the models reward information gain. So new, specific, authentic, verifiable facts. You know, we talk about statistics being so important. If your page sounds like a remix of the same 20 things, it's not going to get cited well. But if it adds something genuinely useful for each of those pages and explains a concept clearly, then it will.
So concentrate on a few pages that deliver real, unique answers. So stop spreading all your effort across dozens of posts that look exactly like what all your competitors have. That's not going to be useful anymore.
Yeah. The next kind of critical framework is what we call multi-platform reality, which is just a fancy way of saying results vary a lot by all of these different platforms. ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Google AI mode. There's a bunch. But the results vary. So don't optimize for one and call it done. You need to think about how your results show up in all of them.
So think share of voice across multiple systems. So make your content quotable everywhere. So clear claims, sources, structured facts, human readable language, all of that is going to be really important.
And lastly, timing. So with classical SEO, early stage startups often wait. With AEO, you got to start early. Focus on those long tail questions and get credible third-party citations via Reddit and Wikipedia and published articles.
For later stage companies, keep doing what works in SEO. Like we say, AEO stands on the shoulders of SEO, but layer your AEO on top. So deeper FAQs, product specs, comparisons, implementation details, external citations, all of that. Just keep building on all of that.
So the bottom line, fewer, better pages with original information, optimize for multiple AI platforms, and start your AEO now. All right, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some other AI news from this week.
To be honest, that was the biggest story.
I know.
That story is the only one that really matters.
Interwove our
I know, we
AI
did.
news.
We did.
But there's some other good stories out there that I think are relevant for our audience. So
So in other OpenAI news, because they had a big week, they have just launched Sora 2, which is their video generation model. But what's interesting isn't just that it creates video, it's how they're positioning it. They have built a TikTok-like feed where you can browse AI-generated videos, you can remix them, you can share them. This is very similar to something that Meta is doing as well. They are also creating an AI-generated feed as well. Everything is merging into each other.
It's just share of eyeballs, right? OpenAI is trying to get more and more of your time. But video content is expensive and time consuming to produce. So if you're an early stage company that needs product demos, explainer videos, social media content, this could be really big for you in your content production costs.
I'm going to go off piste a little bit with this because I was just listening to a podcast about Hollywood, and specifically this podcast was about Sora and IP, because apparently it is very easy to generate well-known characters, which is something that OpenAI was pretty strict about with DALL-E, but I guess they're not so strict about it now, because you could definitely use some copyrighted characters. So that is going to be a big fight. That is going to end up being very interesting. That will change. It's worth a listen, that podcast on Sora with Matt Bellany. If you're thinking about using Sora, just bear that in mind, I think.
Yeah. Lastly, I'll just say this about, the result, the TikTok style feed, it's obviously very viral. It's a great discovery mechanism. So people can find and remix content, which means your AI generated videos could potentially reach high level of audiences organically.
I think the one thing I will say about this, and I was doing some research on the Meta one the other day, I don't know if people actually want this. The reaction to the Meta AI slop feed was not positive. Like, they got a lot of pushback. So I think the question is, do people want this?
Yeah.
Question mark. Let's see.
That term AI slop actually came up in one of my conversations last night with a friend. So Jess, maybe we should define that real fast, and then, because it will keep coming up, I think.
Yeah, so AI slop is essentially all those shitty AI videos that you see on TikTok now. Actually, they do already exist, but it's things where, like, your dog flies across the sky or something, stupid shit like that. We're going to do an episode on AI slop because it's going to increasingly become a really big problem.
But I think it also encompasses like the poor content that you see that's very clearly AI written. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Because eventually the AI is going to be like a snake eating its own tail, an Ouroboros, if you will, because it's going to train on that, and then it's just training on
self-defeating cycle.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, we don't have time to get into that. We've got a bunch more stories to cover.
Yeah.
Let's talk about.
This next one's really big for anyone using Slack, which is probably a lot of us. Anthropic just launched a native Claude integration for Slack workspaces. So you can now have Claude directly in your Slack channels.
And this isn't just a chatbot. It can actually access your Slack history. It can understand context from your conversations, and it can actually be really helpful instead of just another notification that you ignore, because I think we all have those notifications that we ignore on Slack.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one. Now you can use Claude to summarize super long threads or draft responses. Some people have their customer support conversations feed into Slack. So you could actually have Claude take a look at that and identify issues. But just ultimately, I'm getting to the point where I'm having a really hard time finding things. And I think this will help solve that problem.
Absolutely. My previous company barely used emails. They did almost everything on Slack, and Slack is notoriously difficult to search for things. Like, when you absolutely are convinced that you saw something and you cannot find it for the life of you because there are too many channels. It's actually just as bad as email at this point. But I think the practical use case that I keep thinking about are meeting notes. So if you have a Slack channel for a project, Claude can review the conversations and generate a summary of decisions made, action items, open questions. Like, I think that is genuinely useful for small teams that don't necessarily have a dedicated project managers. I think the privacy considerations are worth thinking about, though. Make sure that you understand what data Claude has to and configure permissions appropriately. Not everything in your Slack should be AI-Readable, just something to bear in mind,
Mm-hmm.
as always.
All right, time for everyone's favorite segment, AI gone wrong. And this week's story is particularly relevant because it shows what happens when AI content generation goes unchecked.
This is actually a little bit of the AI sloth that we were talking about
Exactly.
moments ago. So Spotify just removed 75 million spam tracks in the past year. 75 million. That number is ridiculous.
And the reason for this explosion, obviously, the blame sits with
Yep.
AI.
Yep.
So AI generated music has made it really easy to create and upload thousands of tracks. So this is not AI assisted production where artists use AI tools creatively. We're talking about fully automated, low quality tracks designed purely to game the streaming royalty system.
So here's how the scam works. Someone uses AI to generate hundreds or thousands of generic tracks. So that could be ambient music, lo-fi
Mhm.
beats, white noise, whatever. They upload them to Spotify under dozens of fake artist names. They use bots or click farms to artificially inflate play counts. Each play generates a tiny royalty, but if you multiply that by
Mhm.
millions of fake plays across thousands of tracks, and that actually becomes legitimate money.
Yeah. And my issue with this is not that necessarily the tracks were created. It's
Yeah.
that they used the bot farms
Yeah.
to, you know, fake people listening to it to then create money. That's the real problem. Not that it was AI generated content, but that they used these AI bots to bump up the price so that or bump up the listen so they would get more money. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, if you think about it, right, Spotify is gets a pool of money and then they distribute that to artists based on the overall pool. So if a section of that is being taken away
Mm,
for these AI bot
yeah.
farms from the overall money that Spotify has, you're really harming the artists.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you know, this isn't theoretical. I mean, Spotify estimates 5 million tracks is a lot, and those tracks were generating millions in fraudulent royalties before they were cracked down. So again, that's a lot of money being stolen from legitimate artists.
I think what's particularly insidious, there's a word, is that some of these tracks are designed to appear in algorithm generated playlists. So Spotify DJ. So real users ended up listening to them without realizing that they're AI
Mhm.
spam. So it does really pollute the entire
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Now, here's the bit that I find particularly ironic. In order to combat this, Spotify implemented new AI policies and what they're calling spam filter enforcement. So they're using AI to detect AI generated spam.
So the detection, it focuses on a few things. So unusual upload patterns, like one account uploading 500 tracks in a week, similarity analysis to identify tracks that are clearly variations of the same, basically AI generated template, and engagement patterns that look like bot activity rather than real listeners.
Mhm.
I don't know. I could be counted as bot activity because I listen to the same songs over and over and over again, although they are definitely not AI generated.
But I think that, I mean, maybe that's normal behavior because I feel like we all have that. But I mean,
We
and
should
this is,
listen to our Wrapped at there, see what our Wrapped says at the end of the year.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Where I think this is fascinating and maybe hilarious is that ultimately you get this arms race between the
yeah,
two. So as Spotify gets better detecting AI spam, the spammers are going to get better at making their AI content look more legitimate. So we just have AI versus AI. And I'm
yeah.
not sure that's a weird Skynet reality. I'm not sure
It
where that goes.
it sure is, but what is the takeaway for our audience in this instance?
Always goes back to being a cautionary
Yeah,
tale about AI generated content. So if your strategy is I'll just have AI generate hundreds of pieces of content and flood the internet with it without like a real perspective, without some of that authenticity, you're going to get caught.
yeah.
Platforms are getting better at detecting this. And when they do, you're going to get banned.
I think all of this just comes back to what we keep talking about with AEO, is that authentic authenticity and quality
Mhm.
matter because that is what people actually want. So even if you're using AI, you should absolutely still have that authentic tone to it. There still has it's that is still absolutely key, and the platforms are only gonna get better at detecting it, so that is where human insight and human involvement becomes even more important.
Yeah. So if you're using AI in your content creation, which you absolutely should,
Yep.
obviously we encourage that, but make sure there's genuine human oversight editing, that you're adding value, that you have a perspective. The AI is a tool to help you create better content or to help you with that challenge of the blank page, but it's not a replacement for actually just creating content and producing a ton of slop. Okay, so Jess, we're going to wrap up here. We've given a lot of information.
Well, as always.
As always, but we're going to try to give you some really clear action items from this bit. We want to make this practical. So the key action item number one, we talk about this a lot, but do a visibility audit. Go to the SEMrush AI Visibility Index, search for your brand on ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI Mode, see what shows up, what doesn't, and then take screenshots that or record it. This is going to create your baseline.
And we talk about the SEMrush tool because it's free for now. So take advantage of that while you can. Action item number 2 is this question mining that we talked about earlier. So take a couple hours, go through all your sales call notes, go through your support tickets, your Reddit threads in your industry. All of that can be dumped into ChatGPT and it can help you identify all of these. But create a list of, 50 to 100 actual questions that your customers are asking. And it will all be in there, but that is going to help guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, take a look at your customer support system and pull out the top questions and then go through and answer those. Action item number 3, think about one authentic contribution. So find a Reddit thread or a forum post or an online discussion where you can genuinely help and provide some information because it's something that your business solves. Identify yourself, share some useful information. That won't be spammy. And try one, see how it feels, see what the engagement and see how that, basically helps you improve what you're doing.
Action item number 4, test your structured data. So pick your most important product or service page, ask ChatGPT to summarize it. Is the information clear and accurate? If not, what's missing or confusing? Fix that.
So Jess, test, measure, and as we always talk about, always be iterating.
Always be iterating. That's gonna help you with AEO.
And with that, we're wrapped up.
That is us done for the week. As always, it's a lot of information that we are throwing at you, but we hope that you find it useful and interesting. And remember, you can find us on all your social media channels. We are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere you can find anything. We are there. We are at early_adopter. Remember, there is no E in adopter.
Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, whatever you're supposed to do on all those channels. Make sure you do that.
Yeah, exactly. It does really help us be discoverable. And on that note, we look forward to talking to you next week. Have a great week. Bye,
Thanks,
Kyle.
Jess. Bye.